You owe me 8,000, Pete. Pay it, or there will be consequences.
I don't have that kind of money.
People say the American dream went to pieces in Detroit. I say it just started drinking and moved to places like Millfield, where broken promises rust slower in the rain. My name is Ray Dempsey, and I own a used car lot that looks like automotive purgatory. 38 years old, married to Linda for 15 years, father to Megan, who's 14, and treats me like I'm radioactive. Most days, I sell hope with 4 wheels and a prayer that the transmission holds together long enough for the buyer to drive off my lot. The morning everything changed started like any other. Linda stood at the kitchen counter, coffee mug in hand, staring out the window like she was planning her escape route. Her auburn hair caught the light, and for a second I remembered why I'd fallen for her back when we were both young and stupid enough to believe in forever. "Ray, we need to talk," she said without turning around. Those 4 words. Every married man knows them. They're the opening notes to a symphony of misery. "About what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. She finally turned, and her green eyes held that cold distance I'd been seeing more often lately. "About us, about what we're doing here. We're having breakfast, or trying to. Don't be smart with me." Linda's voice carried that edge that meant I was already losing whatever conversation we were about to have. "You know what I mean." I poured myself coffee and sat at our kitchen table, the same one we'd bought at a garage sale 12 years ago when we still thought matching furniture mattered. "Actually, I don't. Why don't you spell it out for me?" "We're not happy, Ray. We haven't been happy for a long time. Speak for yourself." That was a lie, and we both knew it. Our marriage had been running on fumes for months, maybe longer. The conversations had gotten shorter, the silences longer. Linda worked at Morrison's bookstore downtown, and lately she'd been pulling extra shifts, coming home after Megan was already asleep. "I've been thinking," Linda continued, "maybe we should consider some time apart." "Time apart?" I repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. What does that mean exactly? It means I need space to figure out what I want. What she wanted. Not what we wanted, not what was best for our family. What she wanted. And Megan, she'll understand. Kids are resilient. Kids are resilient. Another one of those phrases people throw around when they're about to wreck a child's world and need to feel better about it. I studied my wife's face, looking for some sign of the woman I'd married. She'd been Linda Kowalski then, working at the diner on Route 9, saving money for community college. I'd been the guy with big dreams and a small bank account, convinced I could build something from nothing. "Is there someone else?" I asked. The pause lasted about 2 seconds too long. "No, Ray, this isn't about anyone else. This is about us." Another lie. I'd been married to Linda long enough to know when she was dancing around the truth. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started keeping her phone face down on the table during dinner. "Okay," I said, "if that's what you want." She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "Okay?" "Yeah, okay. You want space? You've got it." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The thing about being underestimated is that people show their cards too early. They assume you're not paying attention, that you don't see the patterns, that you'll just roll over and accept whatever they're serving. They're usually wrong. After Linda left for work, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and thinking about patterns. The way she'd been working late 3 nights a week, always the same nights. The way she'd started doing her own laundry separately. The way she'd gotten defensive when I'd asked about the mileage on her car. Tanya Rodriguez showed up at the lot around 9, same as always. Tanya's my only full-time employee, a tough woman who knows more about cars than most mechanics and doesn't take garbage from anyone. She's 29, divorced, and has the kind of street smarts you can't learn in school. "You look like someone ran over your dog," she said, unlocking the trailer that serves as our office. "Linda wants a separation." Tanya stopped in her tracks. "About time." "Excuse me?" "Ray, come on. You two have been circling the drain for months. Anyone with eyes could see it." She wasn't wrong, but hearing it out loud still stung. "You think there's someone else?" I asked. Tanya gave me a look that suggested I might be the last person in Millfield to figure it out. "Honey, there's always someone else when a woman starts talking about needing space." "Any idea who?" "Pete Rinaldi." The name hit me like a slap. Pete "Slick" Rinaldi, former plumber turned self-styled property investor. Drove a cherry red Dodge Charger and wore gold chains like he was auditioning for a mob movie. I'd seen him around town, always talking loud in restaurants, always making sure people noticed his watch. "How do you know?" April Hendricks told me she saw Linda getting into his car outside the bookstore last week. Figured you knew. April Hendricks. Linda's friend, the town's unofficial information exchange. If April knew, everyone knew. Why didn't you tell me? Wasn't my place. Besides, I figured you'd catch on eventually. I spent the rest of the morning trying to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering. A young couple came by looking at a Honda Civic, and I found myself going through the motions of salesmanship while planning what I was going to do about my wife and Pete Rinaldi. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Can you pick up Megan from school? Working late again tonight? Working late, right. I picked up Megan at 3:15. She climbed into my truck with the enthusiasm of someone heading to a root canal. Mom says you guys are having problems, she said without preamble. Your mom talks to you about that? She talks. I listen, sometimes. Megan inherited Linda's green eyes and my stubborn streak. She's smart enough to see through adult nonsense, but young enough to think she can fix everything with the right combination of words. What did she tell you? That you need time to work things out? That maybe she'll stay at Aunt Carol's for a while? Aunt Carol lived in the next county. That was news to me. How do you feel about that? Megan shrugged, the universal teenage response to questions they don't want to answer. Whatever, can we get pizza? We got pizza from Tony's, the same place we'd been going since Megan was little. She ate in silence while I tried to figure out how to be a father in the middle of a marriage that was falling apart. Dad? Yeah? Are you going to be okay? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on what Linda was doing, what Pete Rinaldi represented, what it all meant for our family, that I hadn't stopped to consider what it meant for me. I'll be fine, sweetheart. Promise? Promise. Another lie, but sometimes lies are what keep the world from spinning off its axis. That evening, after Linda came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, after she'd made her excuses and disappeared into the bathroom for a shower that lasted 45 minutes, I sat in my garage and thought about revenge. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, the real kind. The kind that happens in courtrooms and bank accounts and small-town gossip networks. The kind that destroys people slowly, methodically, completely. I'd spent 15 years being the good husband, the reliable provider, the guy who fixed what was broken and paid the bills on time. I'd been careful with money, conservative with risks, always thinking about tomorrow. But tomorrow was looking different now. Tomorrow was looking like a place where I didn't have to be the good guy anymore. The next morning, Linda was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Carol's for a few days. Need to think. We'll call about Megan. Need to think. That was rich. I made coffee and called my lawyer, Frank Morrison. Yeah, same Morrison who owned the bookstore where Linda worked. His daughter had taken over the day-to-day operations, but Frank still handled legal work for half the town. Ray, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I need to know my options, Frank. Linda wants a separation. A pause. I see. You want to come in and talk about it? This morning work? 10:30. Frank's office occupied the second floor of a building that had seen better decades. The carpet was worn thin and the coffee was terrible, but Frank knew family law like a mechanic knows engines. How bad is it? He asked after I'd explained the situation. She's seeing someone. Pete Rinaldi. Frank's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. You sure about that? Sure enough. Okay, let's talk about protecting your interests. For the next hour, Frank walked me through the reality of divorce in our state. Community property, custody arrangements, alimony calculations. It was like getting a tutorial on how to dismantle a life. The good news, Frank said, is that you've been smart about money. The house is in both names, but the business is solely yours. Most of your assets are protected. What about Megan? Courts favor shared custody these days, but if you can prove instability on Linda's part, such as adultery doesn't carry the weight it used to, but abandoning the family home, disrupting the child's routine, introducing inappropriate relationships. Frank shrugged. It all adds up. I left Frank's office with a clear picture of what needed to happen. Linda thought she held all the cards because she'd made the first move. She was about to learn that making the first move and making the right move weren't the same thing. My first stop was the bank. Linda and I had 3 joint accounts: checking, savings, and a money market account we'd been building for Megan's college fund. As of that morning, I was the sole signatory on all 3. It's amazing how quickly you can rearrange a financial life when you put your mind to it. By noon, Linda's debit card was canceled, her name was removed from our accounts, and every automatic payment from insurance to utilities had been redirected to accounts she couldn't access. I wasn't stealing her money. Everything I moved was legally mine to move. But Linda had gotten comfortable thinking of our money as her money, and comfort was about to become a luxury she couldn't afford. My phone started ringing around 2:30. "Ray, what did you do?" Linda's voice was tight with panic. "What do you mean?" "My card was declined at the grocery store. The bank says the account is closed." "That's strange. You should probably talk to them about that." "Ray, don't play games with me." "I'm not playing games, Linda. You wanted space, remember? I'm just making sure you have all the space you need. This is about money, not space. Everything's about money when you get right down to it. I need access to our accounts." "Our accounts?" I let that hang in the air for a moment. Funny thing about that. Turns out they were never really our accounts. They were my accounts that you had access to. You can't do this. Actually, I can. I checked with Frank Morrison this morning. Everything I did was completely legal. Another pause? Frank Morrison? Yeah, your boss's father. Small town, isn't it? I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, processing the implications. Frank Morrison knew about Pete Rinaldi. Frank Morrison's daughter was Linda's boss. Frank Morrison was now my lawyer. "Ray, please. I need money for gas, for food. Maybe Pete can help you out. I hear he's doing well in the property business." "This isn't about Pete." "No? Then what's it about?" "It's about us. About our marriage." "Our marriage ended the minute you started seeing someone else. I'm just making it official." I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I let it go to voicemail, then again and again. By 5 o'clock, I had 7 voicemails from Linda, each one more desperate than the last. The first few were angry, demanding that I stop being childish and think about Megan. The later ones were pleading, promising that we could work things out if I'd just be reasonable. I deleted them all without listening to the end. Tanya found me in the office, staring at my phone. "Rough day?" she asked. "Linda's having some financial difficulties." "Poor thing." Tanya's voice dripped with mock sympathy. Maybe she should have thought about that before she started playing house with Slick Pete. "You really don't like him, do you?" "Honey, I've known guys like Pete Rinaldi my whole life. All flash, no substance. The kind of man who borrows money from his girlfriend and calls it love." That gave me an idea. "Tanya, what do you know about Pete's business situation?" "You mean his property investments?" She made air quotes with her fingers. "From what I hear, he's been flipping houses with money he doesn't have. Classic over-leveraged situation." "Meaning?" "Meaning he's probably one bad deal away from losing everything." "Why?" "Just curious." But I wasn't just curious. I was planning. That evening I drove past Pete's house on Elm Street. It was a modest place, probably built in the 70s, with a front yard that needed work and a driveway that needed repaving. The red Charger was parked out front, gleaming under the streetlight like a beacon of poor financial decisions. I parked across the street and waited. Around 8:30, Linda's Honda pulled into the driveway behind the Charger. I watched her get out, smooth her skirt, and walk to Pete's front door like she owned the place. She knocked. Pete answered, wearing a wife-beater and jeans that probably cost more than most people's car payments. They kissed on the doorstep. Right there, where anyone could see them, I took pictures with my phone. They went inside, and I drove home to an empty house that felt bigger and quieter than it had that morning. I sat in my kitchen, looking at the photos I'd taken, and started planning Phase 2 of Linda's education. The thing about small towns is that reputation matters. People talk, and what they say shapes how you're seen, who trusts you, who wants to do business with you. Linda had built her reputation carefully over the years. Devoted wife, loving mother, responsible employee. That reputation was about to become a liability. I started with April Hendricks. April worked at the hair salon on Main Street and knew everyone's business better than they did themselves. She was also Linda's closest friend, which made her the perfect person to plant the right seeds. I called her around 9. "Ray, is everything okay?" "Hi, April. I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted you to hear this from me before you heard it from someone else." "Hear what?" "Linda and I are separating. She's been seeing Pete Rinaldi." A sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God, Ray, I'm so sorry." "I just thought you should know, since you and Linda are so close. I wouldn't want you to be caught off guard if someone else mentioned it." "Of course. Thank you for telling me." "April, I'd appreciate it if you kept this between us for now. I'm trying to protect Megan as much as possible." "Absolutely. You don't have to worry about me saying anything." April Hendricks would have the story spread through half the town by morning, not because she was malicious, but because gossip was her currency, and this was front-page news in a place where nothing much happened. I went to bed that night in a house that felt different, not empty exactly, but full of possibilities. For 15 years, I'd been playing defense, trying to keep everyone happy, trying to hold everything together. Now I was playing offense, and I was just getting started. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. Linda had discovered that I'd canceled the utilities to our house. "Ray, this is insane," her voicemail said. "I came home and there's no power, no water. Megan needs her things." Megan was staying at my apartment, sleeping on the pull-out couch and complaining about the lack of decent Wi-Fi. She'd adapted to the situation with the resilience that teenagers somehow manage when their world gets turned upside down. "Dad, why did you turn off the electricity at the house?" she asked over breakfast. "Because your mother doesn't live there anymore, and I'm not paying to heat and light a house for Pete Rinaldi." That's kind of harsh. Harsh is when someone breaks up your family and expects you to pay for the privilege. Megan considered this while eating cereal that cost twice what it should have. "Mom called me last night. She was crying." "Your mother's good at crying when it serves her purposes. You really think she's just pretending?" I looked at my daughter, trying to figure out how much truth a 14-year-old could handle. "I think your mother made choices, and now she's dealing with the consequences. That's how life works." "But you still love her, right?" The question hit me harder than I expected. Did I still love Linda, or was I just addicted to the habit of loving her? "It's complicated, sweetheart." That's what adults always say when they don't want to answer a question. Smart kid. By 10 o'clock, April Hendricks had done her job. My phone was ringing with calls from people who wanted to check on me and see if there was anything they could do. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Expressions of sympathy, carefully worded questions about what had happened, and barely concealed excitement about having front-row seats to a marriage imploding. Mrs. Patterson from the church called. "Ray, I heard about you and Linda. I'm so sorry." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. It's been difficult." "If there's anything we can do, and Ray, I want you to know that the church community is here for you. What Linda did, well, it's not right." What Linda did, past tense, like it was already common knowledge. I appreciate that. That Pete Rinaldi, I never liked him. Too flashy, you know? Not the kind of man a married woman should be spending time with. By noon, I'd gotten similar calls from 6 other people. The narrative was writing itself. Ray Dempsey, the wronged husband. Linda Dempsey, the unfaithful wife. Pete Rinaldi, the homewrecker with the fancy car and the gold chains. I drove to the bookstore around 1 o'clock. Linda was behind the counter, looking tired and stressed. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the fact that she'd been crying recently. "We need to talk," I said. "Not here." She glanced around the empty store. "My boss is in the back." "Then let's talk here. Ray, please." "You wanted space, Linda. You wanted to end our marriage. You wanted to move in with Pete Rinaldi. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted." "I never said I wanted to end our marriage. Actions speak louder than words. I made a mistake. You made a choice. There's a difference." Linda's boss, Sarah Morrison, emerged from the back room. She was Frank's daughter, a woman in her 40s who'd inherited her father's sharp eyes and no-nonsense attitude. "Everything okay out here?" Sarah asked. "Just fine," I said. "I was just telling Linda how sorry I am that things didn't work out between us." Sarah's expression suggested she knew exactly what was happening and was enjoying the show. "Linda's been a valuable employee," Sarah said carefully. "I hope this situation won't affect her work." "Oh, I'm sure Linda will land on her feet. She's resourceful that way." Linda's face flushed red. "Ray, stop." "Stop what? I'm being supportive. After all, you're going to need all the support you can get now that you're starting over." I left the bookstore feeling like I'd accomplished something important. Not the conversation itself, but the fact that Sarah Morrison had witnessed it. Sarah would tell her father, Frank would mention it to other lawyers, and the story would continue to spread. That afternoon, I paid a visit to Pete Rinaldi. His house looked different in daylight. Smaller, shabbier, like a movie set that only worked from certain angles. The red Charger in the driveway had a dent in the rear quarter panel that I hadn't noticed the night before. I knocked on the door. Pete answered wearing a bathrobe and an expression that suggested he wasn't used to unexpected visitors. Up close, he was smaller than he seemed from a distance, maybe 5'8" with the kind of tan that came from a bottle. "Yeah? Pete Rinaldi? Who's asking?" "Ray Dempsey, Linda's husband." His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, fear, calculation, and finally a kind of defensive bravado. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "Neither do I. I just wanted to meet the man who's been seeing my wife." "It's not like that." "No? What's it like?" Pete glanced around nervously, like he was expecting neighbors to be watching, which they probably were. Maybe we should talk inside. I'm fine right here. Look, Ray. Can I call you Ray? This whole thing, it just happened. Linda was unhappy, and I was there, and you thought you'd help her work through her marital problems. Something like that. I studied Pete's face, looking for some sign of the charm that had attracted my wife. He was handsome enough, in a small-time hustler kind of way, but up close he looked like what he was, a guy trying too hard to be something he wasn't. How's business, Pete? The question caught him off guard. Business? The property investment thing. I hear you're doing well. Yeah, well, you know how it is. Market's tough right now. I bet. Must be expensive keeping up appearances. Nice car, nice clothes, taking women out to dinner. I do okay? I'm sure you do. Just curious, though. How much of that is your money, and how much belongs to other people? Pete's face went pale. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just making conversation. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, Pete? You might want to be careful about the utilities at Linda's place. I hear the power's been shut off. Wouldn't want her to be uncomfortable. I walked back to my truck, feeling Pete's eyes on me the whole way. Phase 3 was about to begin. That evening, I called Megan's school and spoke to her guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen. I explained that Linda and I were separating, that Megan would be staying with me for the foreseeable future, and that Linda's contact information had changed. I'm sorry to hear about your situation, Mr. Dempsey. How is Megan handling it? She's resilient, but I wanted to make sure you knew what was happening in case it affects her schoolwork. Of course. Is there anything else we should know? Well, Linda's been staying with a friend. I just want to make sure that if anyone other than Linda tries to pick up Megan, you call me first. Absolutely. We'll make a note in her file. Another seed planted. Another piece of the narrative falling into place. By the end of the week, the story had taken on a life of its own. Linda Dempsey had abandoned her family for Pete Rinaldi. Ray Dempsey was struggling to hold things together for his daughter's sake. Pete Rinaldi was a smooth-talking opportunist who preyed on vulnerable women. None of it was technically untrue. That was the beauty of it. Linda called me Friday night, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. Ray, please, we need to work this out. What's to work out? You made your choice. I want to come home. Home? You mean the house with no electricity or water? The one you walked away from? I made a mistake. You made several mistakes. The question is, what are you going to do about them? What do you want me to do? It was the first time in our entire marriage that Linda had asked me what I wanted. The irony wasn't lost on me. I want you to live with the consequences of your choices, just like everyone else has to. What about Megan? What about her? She's fine. She's got a roof over her head, food on the table, and a parent who puts her first. I put her first. No, Linda. You put yourself first. You put Pete first. You put your need for excitement first. Megan was just someone you expected to understand and adapt. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and it came out harsher than I intended. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been talking to me before you started seeing someone else. Fair would have been trying to fix our marriage before you decided to replace me. Fair would have been thinking about your daughter before you moved in with your boyfriend. Pete and I aren't. It's not like that. Save it, Linda. I've heard enough lies to last a lifetime. I hung up and sat in my apartment, listening to the silence. Megan was spending the night at a friend's house, so I was alone with my thoughts and a bottle of whiskey that had been sitting in my cabinet for 3 years. I didn't open the bottle. I had work to do, and I needed a clear head to do it. Pete Rinaldi was about to learn that some games have higher stakes than others. Monday morning brought news that made my coffee taste better than it had in weeks. Tanya arrived at the lot with information that would have cost me thousands to get from a private investigator. Your boy Pete's in trouble, she announced, settling into the chair across from my desk. What kind of trouble? The expensive kind. Remember I told you he was flipping houses with borrowed money? Well, turns out he borrowed from some people who don't accept late payments. Such as? Larry Kowalski, for one. I knew Larry by reputation. He ran a construction company that did legitimate work, but everyone knew his real business was lending money to people who couldn't get it from banks. Larry was old-school Polish, built like a refrigerator, and had the kind of patience that lasted exactly as long as his payment terms. How much does Pete owe him? $15,000 plus interest. Payment was due last week. How do you know all this? Tanya grinned. My ex-husband works for Larry. Some information is worth the price of a few drinks and a sympathetic ear. I spent the morning thinking about Pete's financial situation while I showed a young couple around a Honda Accord that had seen better years. The husband was worried about the mileage, the wife was worried about the color, and I was worried about how to use Pete's debt to my advantage. Around noon, I got a call from Frank Morrison. "Ray, we need to talk. Can you come in this afternoon?" "What's going on?" "Linda filed a motion for temporary support. She wants you to pay her rent, utilities, and living expenses while the divorce is pending." "Can she do that?" "She can try." The hearing's Thursday morning. I drove to Frank's office feeling like I'd been sucker punched. Linda was broke, desperate, and apparently willing to use the court system to solve her financial problems. "What are our chances?" I asked Frank. "Depends on how the judge sees it. Linda's claiming financial hardship, says you cut off her access to marital funds without warning." "I didn't cut off anything. I protected my assets from someone who was planning to leave me." "That's our argument. But judges don't like it when one spouse suddenly finds themselves with no money and nowhere to live." "She has somewhere to live. She's living with Pete. Can you prove that?" I showed Frank the photos I'd taken of Linda going into Pete's house. "This helps," he said, "but it's not enough. We need to show that Linda chose to leave, that she had alternatives, and that she's not as helpless as she's claiming to be." "What do you suggest?" Frank leaned back in his chair, studying me with the expression of a man who'd seen every variation of human stupidity that divorce court could produce. "We need to be careful here, Ray. The judge is going to be looking at your behavior, too. If it looks like you're being vindictive or trying to punish Linda for the affair, it could backfire. So what do I do? You be the reasonable one. You show up in court looking like a concerned father and a responsible husband who's trying to protect his family's financial security. While Linda gets to play the victim. While Linda gets to explain why she chose to leave her home and her daughter to move in with another man. That afternoon, I made a decision that would either solve my Pete problem or create a bigger one. I called Larry Kowalski. "Larry, this is Ray Dempsey. I own the used car lot on Route 9. "Yeah, I know who you are. What can I do for you?" "I hear Pete Rinaldi owes you money." A pause. "Where'd you hear that?" "Small town, people talk." "What's your interest in Pete Rinaldi?" "He's seeing my wife. I'm thinking about buying his debt." Another pause, longer this time. "You want to meet and talk about this?" "Your office tomorrow morning? 10 o'clock?" Larry's construction company operated out of a warehouse on the industrial side of town. The building was all concrete and steel, built to last and designed to intimidate. Larry's office occupied a corner of the warehouse floor, separated from the work area by glass walls that let him keep an eye on everything. Larry himself was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", maybe 250, with hands that looked like they could crush walnuts and a face that suggested he'd been in his share of disagreements. "So," he said after we'd shaken hands and sat down, "you want to buy Pete Rinaldi's debt?" "That's right." "Mind if I ask why?" "Pete's been seeing my wife. They're living together now. I figure if he's going to wreck my marriage, the least he can do is pay for the privilege." Larry laughed, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. "I like that. How much you willing to pay?" "What's he owe you?" 15,000 principal, plus 3,000 in interest and fees, so 18 total. "I'll give you 12,000 for the whole thing." 12? That's 2/3 of what he owes me. It's also 12,000 more than you're likely to get from Pete anytime soon, plus you don't have to chase him for it. Larry considered this. "What makes you think you can collect when I can't?" "I'm not looking to collect. I'm looking to own him." "Meaning?" "Meaning Pete's going to do exactly what I tell him to do, when I tell him to do it, or he's going to find out what happens when someone defaults on a debt to Ray Dempsey." Larry's grin suggested he was beginning to understand the game I was playing. 12,000, he said. Cash. Deal. We shook hands, and just like that, Pete Rinaldi owed me 18,000 that he didn't have. The next morning, I paid Larry in cash and became the proud owner of Pete's financial future. Larry threw in Pete's payment history, contact information, and a detailed list of his assets, which basically consisted of the red Charger and whatever equity he might have in the house on Elm Street. I drove straight to Pete's house. He answered the door looking like he hadn't slept well, which made sense if he'd been expecting Larry's people to come calling. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" "About the 18,000 you owe me." Pete's face went white. "What are you talking about?" "I bought your debt from Larry Kowalski. Congratulations, Pete. I'm your new creditor." "You can't do that." "Actually, I can, and I did. The question now is what we're going to do about it." Pete stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Look, Ray, I know this looks bad. It looks exactly like what it is. You owe me $18,000 and I want it paid. I don't have $18,000. Then we have a problem. What kind of problem? I smiled, and Pete took a step backward. The kind where you do exactly what I tell you to do, or I make your life very uncomfortable very quickly. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you, Pete. I'm explaining your options. Option 1, you pay me what you owe me. Option 2, you make arrangements to pay me what you owe me. Option 3, I exercise my legal right to collect this debt using any means necessary. What does that mean? It means I can garnish your wages, put a lien on your house, repossess your car, and generally make it impossible for you to conduct business in this town until you pay me what you owe me. Pete was sweating now, despite the cool morning air. What do you want? Right now, I want you to stop seeing my wife. I can't do that. Why not? Because I care about her. You care about her? That's touching, Pete, really. But here's the thing. Caring about someone costs money, and you're spending money that belongs to me. Linda and you are living in a fantasy where actions don't have consequences. I'm here to bring you back to reality. I pulled out my phone and showed Pete a photo of the red Charger. Nice car. What's it worth, you think? 8,000? 10? Either way, it's not enough to cover what you owe me. You can't take my car. Watch me. I called a number I'd programmed into my phone that morning. Tony, it's Ray Dempsey. I need that favor we talked about. Yeah, the red Charger on Elm Street. 20 minutes? Perfect. I hung up and smiled at Pete. Tony's towing will be here in 20 minutes, unless, of course, you'd like to reconsider your position on my wife. Pete looked at his car, then at me, then at his car again. This is crazy. This is business? Fine. I'll talk to Linda. You'll do more than talk to her, Pete. You'll end it today, and then you'll stay away from her. And if I do that, then we'll work out a payment plan for what you owe me. Something reasonable, something you can actually afford. How do I know you won't just take my car anyway? Because I'm not interested in your car, Pete. I'm interested in my wife. You give me what I want, and we can do business. You don't, and I'll take everything you have, and it still won't be enough. Pete stood in his driveway, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd been playing poker with someone who could see his cards. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I'll end it with Linda. Today. I called Tony and canceled the tow truck. Smart choice, Pete. I'll be in touch about that payment plan. I drove away feeling like I just won the first hand of a very long game. But the game wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Linda called me that evening, and she was furious. What did you do to Pete? I had a conversation with him about his financial obligations. He says you threatened him. I explained his options. There's a difference. Ray, this has gone too far. Has it? Because from where I'm sitting, this is just getting started. Pete ended things between us. Good for Pete. Smart man. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're angry. I'm not destroying anyone's life, Linda. I'm protecting my own interests. Pete borrowed money he couldn't repay, and now he's dealing with the consequences. You chose to leave your family for another man, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Actions have consequences. That's how the world works. I want to come home. Home to what? The house with no power? The marriage you walked away from? The family you abandoned? I made a mistake. You made a series of choices, and now you get to live with them. What about Megan? Megan's fine. She's got a stable home, a parent who puts her first, and a future that doesn't depend on your ability to make good decisions. She needs her mother? She needs a mother who acts like a mother. You've been too busy playing house with Pete to remember what that means. Linda was crying now, but I'd heard her cry before when she wanted something. Tears were just another tool in her arsenal. Ray, please, I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of having someone to fall back on when your other plans don't work out. But that's not love, Linda. That's convenience. I hung up. Thursday morning's court hearing went exactly as Frank had predicted. Linda showed up looking appropriately distressed, wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup. She testified that I'd cut off her access to money without warning, that she had no place to live, and that she was struggling to survive. I testified that Linda had chosen to leave our home, that she'd been living with another man, and that I was simply protecting our family's assets during a difficult time. The judge, a woman in her 50s who'd probably seen every variation of marital drama, listened to both sides and made her decision. Mrs. Dempsey, while I understand your financial difficulties, the evidence suggests that you chose to leave the marital home and enter into a relationship with another man. Mr. Dempsey's actions, while perhaps harsh, appear to be within his legal rights as the primary income earner. However, she continued, looking at me, Mr. Dempsey, I'm ordering you to restore utilities to the marital home and provide Mrs. Dempsey with reasonable temporary support of $800 per month until this matter is resolved. $800 a month. It was less than Linda had asked for, but more than I'd wanted to pay. Furthermore, the judge said, I'm granting Mr. Dempsey temporary custody of the minor child, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Dempsey. Supervised visitation. That was better than I'd hoped for. Outside the courthouse, Linda tried one more time. Ray, we can still fix this. No, we can't. It's too late for that. It's never too late. It was too late the minute you chose Pete over your family. Everything since then has just been cleaning up the mess. I chose wrong. I see that now. You chose what you wanted. The fact that it didn't work out the way you planned doesn't mean you chose wrong. It just means you have to live with the consequences. Frank appeared at my elbow. Ray, we should go. Take care of yourself, Linda, and try to remember that Megan didn't ask for any of this. That afternoon, I restored power to the house and set up the automatic payment for Linda's temporary support. $800 a month was a small price to pay for legal custody of my daughter and the moral high ground in our divorce. But I wasn't done with Pete Rinaldi. I waited a week before I called him. Pete, it's Ray. We need to discuss your payment plan. I thought, since Linda and I aren't seeing each other anymore. You thought what? That your debt would just disappear? That's not how money works, Pete. But I did what you wanted. You did part of what I wanted. Now you need to do the rest. Which is? Pay me what you owe me. I told you, I don't have $18,000. Then we'll start smaller. How much can you pay me this month? A pause. Maybe $500? $500. At that rate, it'll take you 3 years to pay off the principal, and that's not counting interest. Interest? Pete, this is a business transaction. Of course there's interest. How much interest? Let's say 10% annually. That's reasonable, considering your credit history. I can't afford that. Then you'd better find a way to make more money. Over the next month, I watched Pete scramble to meet his obligations. He took on extra construction jobs, sold some tools, and even put his house up for sale. The red Charger disappeared one day, replaced by a 10-year-old pickup truck that had seen better decades. Linda, meanwhile, was learning to live on $800 a month plus whatever she could earn at the bookstore. It wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to, and it showed. Her clothes got simpler, her hair got cheaper, and her confidence got smaller. She tried to see Megan twice during that month. Both visits were supervised by a court-appointed social worker, and both were disasters. Megan was polite but distant, answering Linda's questions with one-word responses and spending most of the time looking at her phone. She hates me, Linda told me after the second visit. She doesn't hate you. She's disappointed in you. There's a difference. How do I fix this? You don't fix it, Linda. You live with it, just like everyone else has to live with the consequences of your choices. I'm her mother. Being someone's mother is about more than biology. It's about being there when they need you, putting their needs before your own, and making sacrifices for their well-being. You had 15 years to figure that out. I can learn. Maybe, but Megan's not going to wait around while you figure out how to be a parent. The final confrontation came 6 weeks after the court hearing. Pete had missed 2 payments, and I'd had enough of his excuses. I drove to his house on a Thursday evening, planning to have a conversation about his commitment to our arrangement. I found Linda's Honda in the driveway. I knocked on the door, and Linda answered. Ray, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same question. Pete needed someone to talk to. About what? Pete appeared behind Linda, looking like a man who'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Ray, this isn't what it looks like. Really? What does it look like, Pete? Linda and I are just friends now. She was helping me figure out my finances. Your finances. The same finances that include $18,000 that you owe me. I know I missed a couple payments. You missed 2 payments, Pete. That's $1,000. Plus interest, that brings your balance to $19,000. 19? But I already paid you. You paid me $1,500 out of $18,000. The rest has been accumulating interest. Linda stepped forward. Ray, you can't do this to him. I'm not doing anything to him. He borrowed money, he agreed to pay it back, and now he's defaulting on our agreement. He's trying his best. His best isn't good enough. I looked at Pete, who was standing behind Linda like she could protect him from reality. Here's what's going to happen, Pete. You're going to pay me $5,000 by the end of the month, or I'm going to foreclose on your house. $5,000? I don't have $5,000. Then you'd better find it. Ray, Linda said, please, don't do this. Don't do what? Collect money that's legally owed to me? Don't destroy his life over money. I'm not destroying his life, Linda. I'm teaching him about responsibility, something you could both use a lesson in. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Linda, the next time you want to comfort Pete, remember that you're supposed to be using this time to figure out how to be a mother to your daughter. But I guess some habits are hard to break. I left them standing in Pete's doorway, looking like two people who'd just realized they were in over their heads. A week later, Pete sold his house. He paid me the $5,000 plus another $3,000 toward his remaining balance. The rest of the money went to other creditors and moving expenses. Linda's temporary support ended when our divorce was finalized. She got visitation with Megan every other weekend, plus one evening a week. I got the house, the business, and primary custody. Pete left town 2 months later, driving his beat-up pickup truck toward whatever fresh start he thought he could find somewhere else. Linda kept her job at the bookstore and moved into a studio apartment above the hardware store. She sees Megan regularly now, and their relationship is slowly improving, but it will never be what it was before Linda chose excitement over stability, romance over responsibility. As for me, I learned something important during those months. I'm not the good guy I thought I was. When pushed far enough, when betrayed deeply enough, I'm capable of things I never imagined. But sometimes being the good guy means everyone else gets to be selfish while you hold everything together. Sometimes being the good guy means you lose everything that matters while everyone else gets what they want. I'd rather be the guy who wins, even if it means I'm not the good guy anymore. The used car lot is thriving, Megan is doing well in school, and I sleep better at night than I have in years. Some people might call that revenge. I call it justice. And justice, it turns out, is a dish best served with compound interest.